Welcome to The Grand Balance, a weekly podcast hosted by two working grandmas navigating the beautiful chaos of work and family. Hi, Angela.
Hi. How are you doing this week? I haven't seen you in a while.
I know. I feel like I haven't seen you in quite a while. Good. Crazy. Trying to get ahead of Christmas a little bit and work and babysitting. I had the baby for the first time over an entire weekend.
Oh my gosh. How was that? Exhausting?
Well, I had forgotten how consuming babies are. Like, it's just nonstop. You go from feeding to naps to changing diapers to playing to doing it all over again 5 times.
I know. And we were just talking about water. When I watch my grandson, I can't find time to drink water. I don't know. I don't know.
It's not even that I don't have time. I completely forget about it. And I go to bed with my water bottle still full going, we're in trouble.
Right. Absolutely. And with my grandson right now, he is starting to transition from bottle to pretty much all solids. I feel like I'm constantly feeding him all day long. We go activity, food, activity, food, activity, food.
With some cleanup mixed in.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly how I felt. I did get a couple cool things, though. I got a big soft play set for her for Christmas. And then instead, I know I had talked before about the Tony, the little box for kids to read stories, etc. I had heard a lot of feedback that the Yoto, Y-O-T-O, was better. So I got a mini one that they can take in the car and you can record books and they can listen to stories and different things. It has white noise. It has podcasts as they get older. So I will report back on that. I'm going to record some books and see how it works. And I will let everyone know if it's a difficult thing to do or easy. I'm just going to need to sit down and read all the instructions.
I haven't started Christmas shopping at all. And I think I mentioned Christmas is my favorite holiday. It doesn't mean I'm on top of it or anything. I still scramble at the end, but
I know. Well, I'm trying to stay organized, but we'll see how long that lasts. But I wanted some time with this Yoto player so I could figure out how to record books before they leave. And I wanted to be able to have access to all their books before they take them so I can kind of see how the whole process works. So,
yeah. So you had the baby for the whole weekend, like 3 days?
Yes.
So did you feel like the parent? Was it stressful?
It wasn't stressful, except for my daughter sabotaged me a little bit with the bottles. She had ordered some new bottles because the baby had just transitioned from the little bottles to the bigger bottles. And she eats a little bit of some of the softer foods, but primarily she still gets all of her nutrients from the bottle, from breast milk. So she left me a bunch of frozen breast milk and some new bottles came on Amazon, sterilized them. This little girl didn't really want to drink the bottles on occasion. So that was a little stressful because she's a little peanut anyway. Find out that they were different nipples than she was used to. So I told my daughter once again, like sabotaging grandma with the bottles. But I knew at least she had enough nutrition in her. She would skip a bottle a day on occasion, but at least she got the other 4 in. So I felt a little better, but a little stressful there. Other than that, I also had the 2 big dogs and my little dog. That added a little bit, but everything went very smoothly. I took her on an outing. That was fun. Supported a family friend with their little girls playing softball. So my little granddaughter saw her first softball game. So that was fun. It went fine. It just like I said, I'd forgotten how all-consuming it really is. Hats off to all the parents out there because it is a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you were just calm, cool, and collected through the whole thing, which is the opposite of our episode today, which is about how parents are more stressed than ever in any generation. And we're going to talk a little bit about why and how we as grandparents can maybe alleviate some of that stress for our kids. So I was listening to the New York Times podcast, one of them, it's called The Daily, and they were talking about the Surgeon General, how he issued a warning that parenting is so difficult today that it has become a public health crisis. It was really impacting parents, mainly because there's this new type of parenting. And I know we've talked about different parenting styles before, but today's parenting is called intensive parenting. And what it means is that parents spend more money on their children than ever before and more time with their children than ever before. And what intensive parenting basically means is they need to be constantly educated, enriched, and entertained. And this, even though it started with the kind of upper middle class, it's now at all levels of the economic spectrum and across all different races and demographics.
I'm a little surprised about that, in that I feel like people have to work more now. And so I guess maybe that's what ends up causing the additional stress, is there's only so many hours in the day. So probably what's happening is parents are sleeping less and using less time to take care of themselves, because I know in this economy right now, people have to work.
And you hit a really great point in the research about this new, generation of parenting that we're in. Working moms today spend just as much time with their children as stay-at-home moms in the 70s did with their children. So they've got an 8 to 10 hour job, let's say, away between commute and all of that. And they're still spending as much time as stay-at-home moms did in the 70s. So you're right, Sharon. Less sleep. They don't do things for themselves like stay healthy. They're not playing tennis or walking or, doing things that's going to maintain their health. And they don't do things as couples, like with their spouse and stuff like that, where in the old days, parents would go out together, have a babysitter, maybe they'd hang out with a bunch of friends, but the kids were off on their own playing, right? They had their adult time while the kids were doing theirs. And now with this intensive parenting, there's so much guilt from working moms. And look, you and I both know as working moms, we've had that guilt before. It's causing way too much stress on the families. And it's not just moms, it's dads too.
Right. That is a crazy statistic. I was thinking too how times have changed. There's always been working moms and stay-at-home moms, and both definitely play a very important role. And I think in the past, moms had more of an opportunity to choose what was best for their parenting style. And I think with finances and the economy today, there isn't as much of a choice. And so parents are having to do things without a lot of choice involved. They lose a lot of the power. They have to work. They have to spend a lot of time doing things where that time wasn't required of them before.
Right. And what's interesting is the reason this came about, in the 70s, the term parent was a noun, and now it's a verb, right? It's how are you parenting versus are you a parent? And in the 80s is when like parenting books came out, where people started paying attention to like how they parented and trying to learn how to parent, instead of earlier generations where it was just they did what they saw when they grew up, or, what they heard. They weren't so focused on the parenting styles and stuff like that.
Or the perfection of it all, probably.
And the perfection of it all. So they're listening to all these experts in these books. So they start doing helicopter parenting and safety and all of that. And then in the 90s, all these studies came out that, the more time you spend with your child, it does, help brain development, which, by the way, you and I have covered in prior episodes. We talk about how much you talk to your baby, the number of words that they hear in their first, couple of years, how that supports their development. So we're getting all of this information and pressure.
I was going to say information overload almost.
Yeah. And pressure to do better for our kids, because in the old days, it was always the next generation is always going to do better than the last, right? But in the 80s, that started changing, where that wasn't necessarily true. So then there became competition about what can you do to give your child the advantage. So then that's when they start looking at, if we get them involved in things, if we spend money on additional sports, maybe they can get a scholarship, which, you and I know we spent tons of money on extracurricular activities for our kids.
Yeah, the joke was, did you spend more on getting them to the scholarship than the scholarship actually paid? But
exactly.
And you also just wonder, that's the situation we found ourselves in. But now with social media, it probably just exasperates everything, because there's so much of the perfect highlight reels out there where they don't show the parent struggling.
Well, and not only are they showing the perfect families, they're also making it so unrealistic that it puts pressure. So my sister told me this story, how her 7-year-old watches kids' YouTube and stuff like that. And there's these families that are building major playgrounds and forts and all this stuff in the backyard. And she said, Mommy, let's go do that. Daddy, let's go do this. It can be done. Here, I'll bring my YouTube. You can see how it's done. And they're like, are you kidding me? Like, we have to clean the house on Saturdays. We have to do laundry. We are not going to be building, massive construction sites in our backyard. But that's the pressure that they're getting even from their own kids. Forget other parents. From their own children, they're getting a lot of pressure.
Well, the wealth probably just seems so much more accessible because it can be viewed on YouTube, where before there was always wealthy, rich people, but you didn't see the trampoline rooms inside their homes and the movie theaters and the full-on playgrounds and resorts in their backyard.
Right. And let's say even if you could afford it, the time and effort to get that stuff done on a weekend.
Oh, no, if you could afford it, you pay someone to do it.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I'm not in that class.
Nor am I, but I'm just figuring if you have enough that kind of money, then you can definitely pay someone.
Yeah. So anyway, the Surgeon General of the United States is calling this out as a crisis because the consistent low levels of chronic stress affects a person's body and mental health as much as like a major stressful event. So given that and the history of what's going on, have you thought about how you can help? I mean, I know we help our children, but I've never thought about it in that way. Like, we're helping them to reduce their stress. I just figured we were helping them, one, because we want to spend time with our grandbabies. And we did have help, when we were raising our kids, or at least I know I did. So I wanted to pass that on, but I didn't really recognize that time where everybody is so stressed out.
Well, I also wonder, in the prior episode when we talked about different parenting styles, with some of this gentle parenting and less boundaries, I'm wondering if it in turn makes parenting more difficult. I think it does. I think any parenting is difficult now, but I think there is a whole other sector with the lack of boundaries that also adds to the difficulty. But I think, like I said, regardless, every parent has difficulties in today's day and age. And so I did look into some ideas of how we can support our children. And one of the things that came up repeatedly was providing emotional support for them to know that we know their job is difficult and we are there. And we had talked about in a prior episode, sometimes it's asking the question, are you okay? What can I help you with? So we really do know maybe what they are struggling with that they might not bring up on their own. So that might be an idea to make sure that they do realize there is assistance and we are there to assist them in whatever capacity we can and they need.
My daughter had mentioned kind of in passing that she and her husband talked about the fact that they haven't, my grandson's over a year old now, and they used to do date nights every single week. And now it's far and few between. So I was thinking about, maybe the night before they come in to our house for me to watch the baby, maybe they just bring the baby and they spend the night that night. And since they're here the next morning anyway, but they go on a date night once a week or once a month or something that I can give that extra help, even though I am helping them twice a week, but maybe this is just an extra little something for them so they can get date night.
No, I love that idea. Have you seen the meme where the parents are complaining that they used to have to ask their parents to go out and now they're right back to square one? They have to ask their parents to go out so that they have a babysitter for their child.
I haven't, but that's funny.
Yeah, they're super funny. What you just spoke about too was another suggestion I'd heard about, offer practical help. And that is a very practical way to help them.
Well, and I think you do that, don't you? When you help watch the baby, it's just to give your daughter some of, her own time, just to like go, besides just shower, but maybe go out for an hour or two, get a manicure if she can afford it or whatever.
Well, that was the next suggestion, encouraging self-care, which I definitely do for her. I want to make sure that she's rested and recharged to take care of my granddaughter, and that in turn, she can get the things done that makes her feel better or gives her a mental break or whatever she needs. Every week does vary a little bit. Sometimes she can go get a manicure. Sometimes she goes for a hair appointment. Sometimes she just wants me to take the baby so she can clean the house in peace.
Yeah.
So there's different ways, but I think encouraging that self-care is really important for parents so that they can kind of recharge their battery. And like you said, plan a date night so they can also recharge their life as a couple.
Right. And you mentioned cleaning the house. So having a messy house, I mean, they've proven this, causes stress by itself.
Oh, I can totally imagine that.
Sometimes I'm a little OCD. I'm not a clean freak, but I can tell you, at least when I was traveling, if I came home to a messy house, my blood pressure would rise and everything. And a clean house, if I came home to a clean house, it was like, home, it was peaceful. So I can imagine when you have a baby, a toddler, you don't have time to clean. And I love that idea of just, I'll take the baby for a few hours, you clean, so you can have a peaceful home.
Right. And I remember having to let go a lot of my clean tendencies when my kids were little because it would stress me out. And I had to realize, and you hear the old sayings that it's more important to play with the kids and have a messy house, or I forgot the exact words.
And there you go. So more important to be with the baby, spend time, and then you cause stress because your house is a disaster.
Right. But I did definitely learn to let go of some of the standards I had before kids because you can't do it all.
So here's a funny story. When my kids were being raised, oh gosh, this is so embarrassing. We went to a neighbor's house and for dinner and kids to have fun or whatever. And we get a knock on the neighbor's door because I had left my car door open when kids jumped out. I'm taking food to the neighbors, whatever. We had left the car door open. The car looked like we lived in it. It was such a disaster. There was so much stuff in there. And then they didn't know who the car belonged to, right? So they came to my home. They tracked the license plate to my home. The police came to the home. They walked in. Somehow they got into the house. I had the dishwasher door open because we ran out of the house. I was loading the dishwasher. We were hurrying out. The house was a disaster. So somehow the police found out where we were. I don't know if they tracked my phone or what.
This is crazy.
And so they came to the neighbor's house where we were. They says, we think somebody has ransacked your home. We need you to come home to see if that thing's been stolen.
I have never heard anything like this.
I swear to you this happened. And so I kid you not, Sharon, ever since, besides being completely humiliated, ever since that time, I have to leave the house I have to leave the house somewhat picked up and clean because we were in a chaotic state. Both my husband and I were working. We just couldn't handle it. No more. Clean house or we're not leaving. I don't care how late we are.
The trauma stays with you.
I know. The humiliation. I just couldn't bear it one more time.
No, that's funny. Of course, you remember the days of like when kids are in middle school and high school and you are running from the time school gets out to practices, to games, to any extracurricular activity. And I remember once my ex-husband told me, I never allow anyone to eat in my car. And I'm thinking, these poor children would starve if they weren't allowed to eat in the car.
That's right. I know. So, I mean, I guess we were stressed, but it wasn't a public health crisis.
Right. So what has changed?
Well, I guess that intensive parenting. I mean, I know when I was raising my kids, when we got together with friends, they played with the kids. We stayed with the adults. That was our adult time. And now it's spend time with the kids. It's important that you interact with the children at every moment instead of, and then apparently the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is a very well recognized and respected organization, said when your kids are watching TV, you should be watching TV with them to explain and to talk about concepts of things going on in the TV. So I'm thinking, to your earlier point, I think it's gotten to be too much. Like if after a certain age when they can start watching TV, go watch TV for an hour so I can cook dinner and I can just get it done quickly in peace and be ready.
I think you're right. All the extra time parents used to have to spend time socializing with other adults as a couple, That's what's been wiped away.
Yeah, go outside and play. Who does that anymore? It's prepare play dates and make sure for those play dates that you have an agenda and you have activities specifically that you have to prepare for and all that, instead of just go outside and play. Just meet at the park while I don't know, run laps at the park. I'll run laps. You go play on the playground. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, I don't envy parents. I'll say that, because there's a lot more stressors. Back to the suggestions of how we can support the kids. A couple other things that were noted in what I found was, if they do want to seek therapy or counseling, to definitely be positive and supportive of that, which I think common sense, everyone could probably figure that out. And the last thing
you know what? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it is common sense, because...
So maybe it's important to say it.
I think it's important to say it because I could see a lot of parents like you and me, we've been through it, not understand the different stressors of today. We researched it. We understand. And to say, what are you talking about? I raised my kids. I was fine. Buck up. It's just how it is being a parent. It stinks sometimes, but just deal with it. So I don't know necessarily if everybody would be supportive. So I'm glad you're giving that suggestion.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I hadn't thought of it in that way, but definitely we need to be supportive when our kids that are parenting are seeking outside help, because clearly they wouldn't be doing that unless they needed it.
Or even recommend it.
Right.
If you see them kind of spiraling a little bit, I'd maybe even recommend.
True. Another suggestion was to be patient and consistent. And I think that's important to something we were discussing. I know you're very consistent with helping with the work schedule. I definitely want my daughter to know that a specific day and time is reserved, so she knows it's something she can count on for the assistance and help. So I think that's an important point. And to also make sure that our children who are parenting know that realistic expectations might not be what they see on social media or on the outside. Help them realize what is actually realistic, and some of the stress parents are putting on themselves might not need to add to the additional pressure of their life. They might need to take a step back and say, this is too much.
I completely agree. It was mentioned in this article, and what the Surgeon General is saying, that social media has just exacerbated it.
Yeah, that
you're getting
doesn't surprise
too many,
me.
You know how it is. It's perfect. Not only do people look 30 years younger than they really are, right? Because of all the filters and everything. But there's so many perfect families out there, and it just makes you feel like crap that you're not doing as good enough job for your
and
family.
The Pinterest perfect homes and the perfect parties and the, like you said, perfect play dates.
Right. It's just too much. Oh my goodness. So maybe we can help them understand that they can let go a little bit.
Right. And be consistently there for them. I think that's an important takeaway from all of this. Let the kids know that you're there, you're willing to help in any way that you can, and for them to feel comfortable maybe expressing when they are frustrated or overstressed or need some assistance in specific areas, or just to vent.
It's really sad that we have to have this episode, that it's gotten that bad, that it is something that the Surgeon General is warning, like tobacco,
right,
and like other things that are so harmful for your health. Parenting should not be harmful for your health. It should be a joy. We all know realistically that it does cause stress sometimes, but not to the extent
where
that
it's a health crisis.
That it's a health crisis.
Yeah. Sad.
Yeah, very sad. So turning it around just a little bit, I want to end on an inspirational grandma story.
I have a fabulous find too, ma'am.
Oh, so we're going to end on a fabulous find, but I'm going to start the end with an inspirational grandma story. So a couple of weeks ago, we heard from our guest, Carrie Weissall, the one that did the cybersecurity tips and tricks, on how even though she's a grandma, she's the one teaching and helping her grandkids with technology, which is really cool. So this got me thinking about other inspirational grandmas that really influence learning at a much deeper level than most. So today I want to recognize Jane Goodall as this week's inspirational grandma. You may recognize Jane as the woman who lived with the chimpanzees, Well, she's 90 years old now, and she's not only legendary for her conservation, but she's quite possibly the coolest grandma on the planet. With only one son and 3 grandchildren, she stayed actively involved teaching the wonders of wildlife and conservation. In fact, now one of her grandsons wrote an article about how much he enjoys working with her and her foundation. So how many grandmas can say that? And while most grandmas are, supporting their children like we are, babysitting, doing activities and stuff like that, Jane at 90 spends 300 days a year. That's 10 months out of the year, traveling the globe, still fighting for chimpanzees and raising awareness for the environment. So let's be honest, most grandmas can only dream of being as awesome as Jane Goodall.
Yeah, that's pretty inspiring.
Yeah. And we can't help but admire her and the way she's passed down her passion and drive for her family and, of course, the world. I just thought, wow, what a cool story.
That is a very cool story. And I hadn't heard her name for quite some time.
And she's still around doing it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right.
My fabulous find. Today's fabulous find is a little pricey, but I wanted to let everyone know about it in case they hadn't heard of it, because I hadn't heard of it. And once I got it, my children gave it to me as a gift, and I love it. And it's called an Oura Ring, Oura. It's really good for health because it measures not only your activity, but it measures your stress levels. It measures your sleep. It tells you how much REM sleep, how much deep sleep, how much sleep you need. It measures your resting heart rate. So if your body's in recovery, it tells you today maybe you should take it easy. And not only that, for younger people, it tracks their natural cycles so they can do birth control on it. I don't have that need for it, but it's another additional use that I know a lot of people use it. But it's just something that the more I use it and the more I get the data for it, I love it because I can see where I'm at, and will also give you an alert if there is something awry with your heart or different health aspects of your life.
That's interesting. It even tracks your cycles as women. That's interesting.
Because it tracks your temperature.
Ah, got it. That's cool.
Yeah. I didn't use it a lot when I first got it because I was mostly just using it for sleep. And as I started wearing it throughout the day, just the different stress alerts and all the stuff it measures, it's truly incredible that a little tiny metal ring can give you all that feedback. It does require a subscription that is $5 a month. So it's not too substantial, but it does require that to keep all the data.
That's cheaper than most apps, or for sure cheaper than a streaming service. And it's so good for your health.
Right. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. But in case people hadn't heard about it, I wanted to get it out there in case people would like to try or maybe ask for it as a holiday gift.
That's right. Great episode today. I think we talked about some really important stuff and ended up on a very positive note. Thank you all for listening, and we look forward to the next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe to the podcast so we can continue to grow our community. And follow us on Instagram at Working Grandmas Podcast, on Facebook at The Grand Balance, a Working Grandmas Podcast, and join our LinkedIn group, Working Grandmas. You can also email us at info@workinggrandmas.com or message us through any of our social media platforms.